Hello everyone and welcome back to me. That's crazy. Hello everyone and welcome back. I'm here to film a book video today, but before that let me give you an update, I guess. Sorry that I haven't been uploading very often. I have been working on other people's film projects that I'm helping them with, so most of my time when it comes to filming and editing has been spent with other people's footage, which is just very time consuming, but hopefully I'll get back into the groove of things. So today's video is gonna be a book video. It's just a little update on the books I've read recently. I've already made one of these before, so if you want to watch that one first, I'll link it up here and put it in the description. My book challenge for this year is reading 30 books. I've read 22 so far. I've been kind of slowing down, but I've got 7 books for you today, so I hope that you enjoy. I'm just gonna tell you a little bit about each book and what it's about and give you my review. But anyways, let's get started. I have 7 books for you, like I said. I will be talking about them now. Okay, so the first book that I read after I was done with those in the other videos was Film for Her. This was a very random purchase. I was at Barnes & Noble and I just decided to get it because I am a fan of Orion Carloto. I like her YouTube videos a lot and I really like her style. So yeah, I just follow her on Instagram and her social media and I really like her content. So I thought I would try out one of her books. I didn't buy Flux because I had a very strong feeling that I would not enjoy reading it because it just doesn't seem like the type of thing that I would like to read. So I got this one, not because it was the most recent one, but just because I just felt like it had more chances of being enjoyable to me. For those of you who don't know, Orion Carloto is a poet, so this book is just kind of an ode to her youth. It just has poems regarding her life, and it also has pictures because it's a poetry and photography book. That's pretty much it. It's just about her life and her experiences, and I thought that it sounded interesting, so I got it. Now for my review. So I gave this book 2 stars. Let me explain. I didn't really enjoy reading it as much as I hoped I would. This content just feels like it's not for me. When I was reading this book, it felt like it was really just kind of dedicated to herself. I mean, that's kind of the point of the book, right? But it felt like it was just very directed at herself and her group of friends, and I just felt like it made me feel disconnected from the book. Basically, there was nothing in the book that was relatable to me, and I feel like that's partially why it wasn't enjoyable either. Once again, I've already said that in my last video, I love reading different perspectives, and that something doesn't need to be relatable to be appealing to me, but this one just wasn't it for me. Because I didn't relate to a lot of the passages, I feel like it got in the way of my understanding and I just felt very disconnected from the book. It felt like she was just talking about her life and I was standing at a very long distance. But I will say the things that I like about this book. So some of the passages in this book are written literally by hand. It's some of the ones from her notebook, and I thought that really added to her purpose with this book. It just felt very personal. And another thing that I really liked from this book is how she didn't do this all the time. I wish she had done it more often, but you would read a poem and then the picture that would be next to the poem would be kind of an imagery to the poem that you just read, and I thought that was a really good way to put it together, and it was just so satisfying to be reading the poem and then turn the page or look to the next page and it would be the imagery of that poem, like a photo that had to do with what she was talking about. I just thought that was done really well. I really liked that. Another thing that I really liked from this book is the way that she was describing mundane experiences in a very appreciative way and just kind of diving in and giving it depth. I also really liked how she talked about her friendships and how much that meant to her. It's great to see different types of relationships being talked about, and in this book she really talks about how much she values feeling her feelings despite them being negative a lot of the time, and I really liked that. We often try to avoid our negative emotions, but it's important to really feel through them, and a lot of this book was talking about truly feeling your emotions. The next book I read was, good question, The Handmaid's Tale. I gave The Handmaid's Tale 3 stars. So here it is. I gave it 3 stars because the plot didn't keep me hooked all the time. There were moments that I kind of was bored, so that's why. But what I will say about this book is that the world building of this book is so good. She described everything in such an understanding and detailed way that it just made it so understanding, and I just felt like I was really there in the story because I never felt like I was confused as to what was happening. She did an amazing job in Handmaid's Tale. I was never confused, like I said, and I just knew what everything in this world looked like because it was described so perfectly. Also, the character development in this book was very good. I feel like every single character that was described in this book, I know them very well, and there was never any confusion or me wondering. I've read other books that have just left side characters and completely forgotten about them, but this one, literally every single character felt very real because of how detailed they were and how much she made us understand how every character felt and how every character was in the book. So that's something that is insane to me. I feel like this is one of the top books when it comes to world building and character development that I read. Despite the plot not being super crazy, I think, and keeping me hooked all the time, when it comes to the world building and the character development, it's like it was really, really, really well done. So yeah, that's what I think about The Handmaid's Tale. Next book that I read. The next book that I read is a really, really short book. It's called Room 214, A Year in Poems by Helen Frost. I gave this book 5 stars. This is one of the books that I got when I went to a thrift store randomly, and I just looked through the book section and I found this. It's a fictional poetry book about a classroom of 5th grade students. So each page is just written by a different student in the class, and they're all talking about their lives and things that happened to them. And it's a very short book, and it's very wholesome and very simple. I really like reading about daily life and mundane things through different lenses, and this was a perfect way to do it. So yeah, we just got a bunch of different children's perspectives and their own lives, which was really interesting. There was a poem from the child that was getting bullied. There was a poem from the bully. There were poems about children that were homeless. There were poems about a child that was that one of her family members was abusive. So there were just so many different households and so many different experiences in this book from this point of view of children. And I think this is a great reminder to people that children are people and have feelings and have opinions on things. This obviously is fictional, but that doesn't change the fact that in real life this happens, and there's so many different lives that are being lived, you know, in a classroom, and it's just very interesting to think about. I liked reading it, and it's a very wholesome book that I really loved. The next book that I read was Beach Read by Emily Henry. If you follow me on Instagram, or if you're my friend, you know that I love this book so much. This book wasn't even on my list. I was at Target because I always go to the book section anywhere I am at, and I saw this book. I read the back, and it sounded like those beautiful little cliche stories, and I had to get it because it just looked so good. I've never read a book that is kind of a little romance book, and this is a book that takes place in the summer, so the whole summery imagery and style of it was really appealing to me because I always read books that are kind of dark, I feel like, a lot of the time. So I've never read some, like, except for Pride and Prejudice, I feel like I haven't really read a summery book that is just nice. So I loved reading this, and I read this during the summer. Wow! This book is just about 2 authors who are polar opposites. They write completely opposite genres from each other, but they fall in love. It kept me hooked the entire time. I could not put this book down. I had to go out and do things because I have a life, but I did not want to have a life when I was reading this book because I just wanted to read it. And even when it was done, I was like, I still want to read it. I should read it again. I didn't, but I should. I really love this book. Could not put it down. It was like a magnet. I think that the plot was developed really well. I feel like sometimes in romance stories, it's way too focused on the romance and it's not focused on the people themselves individually, as well as what they do in life and what their lives individually are like. And this one, I felt like it did a good job in giving everybody some showtime. That was a terrible way to put it. I do feel like sometimes in this book, when it came to the main character and her own struggles, it started to get a little bit repetitive, but I kind of get it also because it was just showing her going through her problems. I really liked hearing about everybody's point of view in this book. If you read this, you're gonna see that there's a dialogue between her and a person that she doesn't really want to hear from, but I really loved that part of the book. I thought that it brought things into a very good perspective. Like, there's no true villain in this book, but there are the people that are deemed as bad from the main character's perspective, and I liked to hear her point of view when it came to that, because it kind of just brought more depth to the story, and that was really interesting to me. My friends told me that this book would have done so well if it had a dual perspective, and I completely agree. Despite the fact that I feel like the characters were developed enough, I feel like if it had the dual perspective between the main character and the love interest, it would have brought even more to the story. That's pretty much all I have to say about Beach Read. I recommend it. The next book that I read after Beach Read was People We Meet on Vacation by Emily Henry as well. This book I had actually heard about before, and after I read Beach Read, I was like, I need to read this one next. So that's what I did. There were two best friends that used to go on summer vacations together every year, but then something happened, and then it caused a bit of conflict. So we gotta figure out how they're gonna fix that and address the issues. That's pretty much the story. I really enjoyed reading this one as well. I think that the romance was also developed really well in this story. The characters were really likable, which is important, I feel like, in romance books. The one thing that I will say about this book though is that I feel like it focused so much on the romance that I personally didn't get enough from the characters as individuals and their own lives. Of course, the main character, you get more from her, but I really wanted to hear more from the love interest and his own perspectives and just his personal individual life without the main character, because I felt like that would have been really interesting. And even some other side characters, I feel like I could have heard a little bit more about their perspective, because it would have made the book so much more interesting. Next book I read was Sense and Sensibility. This is the 6th book. We only have one left to go. I was very excited to start reading this book. It wasn't on my list either, but I read Pride and Prejudice. I was at the thrift store and I saw this. I was like, Jane Austen. I enjoyed Pride and Prejudice, so I might enjoy this one. I didn't. This book was hell. It was hell. I could not get through it. I felt like I was in jail. I was in prison. By the way, this book took me 2 months to get through. It was that painful to read. I really wanted to finish it. I really had hope until the end. I was like, this might get good in the end. I need to know what's gonna happen. So I just kept reading 300 and something pages of pain and agony. This book is just about two sisters and their love lives. They have very unreliable crushes, I'm gonna call them. So this book is just their struggles when it comes to those relationships. I give this book 1 star. The reason it even got 1 star is because I really like Jane Austen's setting, where the stories that she writes take place. It's pleasing. When it comes to the actual plot of this story, it was so bad, and it just sounds like two spoiled people complaining for 300 and something pages and being immature. And honestly, I'm not gonna lie, there wasn't a single likable character in this book. I am a very nice person and I really try to appreciate people, even though they're fictional. But there was not a single likable character in this book. Wow. But listen, this is my honest opinion. We're on the last book now. Now we're on to The Bell Jar by Sylvia Plath. I finished reading this last night. This book left me conflicted. I gave it 1 star I went into this book knowing a little bit about the author's life, so I did know about the autobiography side of this book, but when I was reading it, I tried to see this book as its own piece of work. Despite of the fact that there's a lot of the author's life in this book, she still made it its own story. It's not everything just her own life. So I try to see it as a separate work from her life, right? But it was very hard to do that. This book is about a 19-year-old girl who struggles with depression and suicidal thoughts, and you just kind of see her journey with that. I was expecting this book to be very, very different. I was expecting it to be detailed so that you could kind of see the gradual change of the main character's mental health, but this book just feels very fuzzy to me. I was reading every single page, every single word, but it felt like I was skimming through it. A lot of the time in this book, it just felt like it was talking about really random scenes in the main character's lives, and then you would kind of catch up a little bit, and then it would get you confused again. You were like, what? What does this have to do with the story? What does this bring into the story? When it comes to its own body of work, it wasn't very interesting to get through. It wasn't painful to get through, but it just wasn't very interesting. I was like, why am I reading this? Not that I was expecting to have gruesome details about depression and suicide, but I just wish that they were more detailed, or that the story was structured better so that I could actually understand the main character. It's another book that I just feel disconnected from while I was reading. A lot of the time when you read, you get connected to the character and you fully understand the character, but this was just, I couldn't fully understand the character and what they were feeling, and I just felt disconnected from it. It felt like I was once again watching from afar. It's so I don't know how to explain it. Fuck. You know how this book feels? It feels like it's a GoPro on somebody's head and you're just watching a video of a GoPro on their head as they live their life. That's how I felt like. That's a really weird analogy, but that's how I felt like. I didn't fully understand the character's feelings or truly know anything about the character, and yeah. But one thing that I'll say that I did like about this book was the bell jar reference, of course. And when it comes to how the book was structured, I enjoy it at the end of the book because it was written in enough details that you couldn't understand what was going on. But basically it's just like I said, different scenes going on, so they just finish a dialogue and then it just switches completely to something else going on at a different time, which kind of leaves whatever happened up to interpretation. And that's something that I really enjoyed when it came to this book. But most of the book, I felt like I was just waiting for something to happen and just waiting for it to get good. But yeah, that's it for my book video. I hope that you enjoyed it. Thank you for clicking as always. I hope that you have a lovely day.